Hi, I'm Charlie Davenport, and today I'm going to show you how to create 3 masks out of leather: a beginner's, intermediate, and a more advanced mask. This will be the first in a series of leather art videos we'll bring you. We're going to start with our mask making tip sheet that includes the supplies, the instructions, and other options, and on the back side it has the tracing patterns, where I want to take our tracing film, lay it over, and I've traced around the outline onto the tracing film so I can transfer the pattern to my leather. The next step we're going to do is we're going to get our leather wet so we can transfer our pattern onto the leather. The leather I'm using today is our 8x10 leather panel, and it's out of a veg tan. It's 3 to 4 ounce, which is the thickness, and we're going to get it wet first. Taking a damp sponge, running it across the leather, just getting it damp. You don't want it too wet. You want to get the whole surface damp. And we're going to put our tracing film on top of the leather, and we're going to trace our pattern using a stylus. You just want an even amount of pressure. You don't want it too deep, just enough to transfer the design. And you hold it down, you can see a line where you transferred, and you can keep checking to make sure you have all the lines done. I'll lift it, make sure I got every, and there we have our pattern traced onto the leather. Now we're going to take our leather scissors and we're going to cut out our pattern, following right along the lines that we traced. I'm going to take my craft knife now, and I want to cut along the lines, cut out the eye holes. I have a cutting board underneath to save the edge of the blade. And this is our mask after it's been cut out. I'm getting the leather damp again because we're going to mold the mask. And now we're going to take the mask and we're going to form it over this mannequin's head. You can use a mannequin's head, your head, or anybody else's head. And pressing down, stretching and forming the leather, pushing in and around. And we're going to leave it there and let it dry, and once it's dry it will retain this shape. What I'm doing now is I'm decorating one of our masks. It's dried, and right now I'm using Tandy Leather Factory's Cova paint, using the white, putting on here, and it goes on real thin, so we're going to do 2 coats once the first coat's dry. That way I can get a real nice white mask. And now that we've completed our basic mask, we're going to move on to our intermediate mask. what I've done is taken our basic pattern to our tracing film, and I made a more elaborate pattern over the basic one. And I've already, over here, I've already traced the pattern out, and I've cut it out with leathercraft scissors. And what I'm going to do is use the swivel knife and modeling tool to give it some decoration. I've dampened the leather, and now I'm going to use the swivel knife to cut the lines that I've traced. And that's all there is to that. Now that I have the lines cut with the swivel knife, what I'm going to do is come back in here with the modeling spoon and push down under the brow along that cut line to give some dimension. Now the next step is to take our leather scissors, and we're going to give our mask some hair, and I'm just going to cut about strips of about 1/8 of an inch all the way around the top of the mask. I'm almost finished cutting the whiskers. Go all the way to the end. We have the mask all cut out. We have all the hair and the whiskers. Now we're going to form the mask over the mold by pressing down . And when you're forming the mask, you want it damp but not wet, so it'll hold its shape once we take it off the form. Now that we have the mask formed over the mold, what I'm going to do is take the hair and I'm just going to twist it. And if your leather is just barely damp, it'll keep its shape. If it's too wet, it'll just come unraveled. I'm going to do this all the way around through all the hair, and I'm going to do the same technique on the whiskers. Now that we've finished our mask, we're just going to let it dry. And once it's dry, it'll retain its shape, and you can decorate it to your choosing once it's dried. Now it's time for our advanced mask. I've already taken our pattern here and I've traced it onto the tracing film just so I can transfer it onto the leather as I've done here. With my leather damp, I'm going to use our swivel knife and I'm going to cut out the lines that we traced. Across the whole pattern. I'm almost done carving. What you want to remember is on your exterior lines to press a little harder so the cuts go deeper. So when we cut the pattern, the mask out, it'll be a lot easier. Now that our mask has the lines cut out with the swivel knife, we're going to give it some texture. Alright, now I'm going to use a craft tool B217 pear shader. And I'm going to stamp it where all of the leaves come out. And fade it out, as in lightly impress the stamp as it gets toward the center of the leaf. The next tool I'm going to use are the 202 bevelers. They're right and left. They have diagonal lines. I'm going to use them on each side of the stems. I'm just walking this beveler along the cut line of the stem. Now I'm using the other beveler and going on the other side of the stem. I'm also using the 202 bevelers for the interior veins of the leaves along into here. tool I'm using now is a beveler 701, and I'm going to bevel every cut line that we haven't previously beveled. And that's all for the 701 beveler. The next tool we're going to use is a veiner. And the veiner I'm using is a 407, and I'm going to stamp it on both sides of the stem going up. As you can see, I'm leaning the tool in toward the stem, leaving a partial impression. The next step, what I've done is I've taken the modeling spoon here and I've run along the stem, rounding the corners on both sides, and then I've come back with a hair blade tool, running it along the length of the stem, giving the stem a nice texture. Then the next step is I'm going to give the texture to the acorn cap here with the swivel knife by just dragging the swivel knife across in a slight arc, going one direction, coming back another direction. And the last step is we're going to cut the mask out using a hobby knife, and I'm just going at an angle, slowly cutting through the leather, going into the cuts we made with our swivel knife along the outside edge. You want to go do this all the way around the exterior lines of the mask and the eye holes. As you can tell, I've already cut the outline of the mask, and now I'm using the craft knife to cut the eye holes. I'm just going at an angle along the lines that we cut with the swivel knife, cutting all the way through the leather. And then we have an eye hole. And with this simple pattern, we've made all these masks from the beginner's mask all the way to the advanced mask.